to speak. Friends of the media, members of the public, good morning. Now, the last such a stand-up media session before Exco was in July, but then of course in the interim you've met me many times. I've hosted at least 4 press conferences. On the 14th of July, the Executive Council started its summer recess, but actually during the recess there were 2 special meetings. Today we are starting Exco meetings earlier than scheduled because I need to review the latest development of the epidemic and the economic situation with the Executive Council this morning so we could come up with strategy. Now, I would like to speak on 3 things here. 1, the critical epidemic. 2nd, the economic process of Hong Kong. And thirdly, the employment support scheme, phase 1 under the anti-epidemic fund. Since early July, we've seen local cases again in Hong Kong, and this epidemic has been rather severe. The SAR government has taken the most stringent social distancing and immigration control measures. Every day, we are reviewing the situation to come up with suitable responses. In the past 2 weeks, the number of new cases every day has dropped from a 3-digit figure to a double-digit figure on a daily basis. Still, there is still a risk of a community outbreak in and there are several reasons for that. Firstly, among the new cases every day, we have not seen a stable downward trend. In the past 5 days, starting from 5 days ago, we had 69 cases, 48 cases, 46 cases, 74 cases, and 44 cases respectively each day. And most of these cases are local cases. And the second point is that the Center for Health Protection colleagues and the police force have been working really hard, but still there are close to 40% of the new locally infected cases have unknown sources of infection. That means we are concerned that there could still be many silent carriers in the community spreading the disease. The third consideration is that there are 2 really worrying clusters. One cluster is the Kwai Chung container terminal. So far, there are more than 60 confirmed cases coming from this cluster. And then there's another cluster of foreign domestic helpers in between jobs. They move into boarding facilities, and there's a cluster there. Now, for these 2 clusters, of course, our response is to carry out tests as soon as possible so we could identify the infected individuals and isolate them, and then we could cut the transmission chain. But so far, we have not done enough in terms of testing there. For the container terminal cluster, we are talking about 7,000 to 8,000 employees. Yes, we have given out many assessment bottles, but the ratio of the bottles being returned is not really high. So far, we've only received just over 1,000 bottles. As for those living in the FDH boarding facilities, well, because at any one time there are people moving in or out of the facilities while they wait for the immigration department to approve the change of employers. And we're talking about some 6,000 such foreign domestic helpers in this category. We have sent them the specimen bottles, hoping they would take the test. But as at last night, we've only about 900 bottles have been returned to us. So we hope for the rest of the many given bottles. I hope they will send us back the bottles as soon as possible and do the test. The 4th point, for the past months, from about mid-July to now, we have carried out community testing for many targeted groups. For example, staff of residential care homes, taxi drivers, minibus drivers, those working in property management and catering industries, and so on. And then for the hospital authority, there are 22 general outpatient clinic, and they distribute specimen bottles to the public. Now, among those tested under the community testing program, many are asymptomatic. But through the community testing, because either they are targeted groups or they just collect the specimen bottles from the general outpatient clinic, we've been able to identify confirmed cases. I can give you an example. For the hospital authorities' general outpatient clinic testing program, so far we have done over 22,000 tests. You know, every day each clinic gives out 110 bottles. And so far we have done over 22,000 tests. And the number of confirmed cases is as high as 56, and that is 0.25%. That means in 1,000 people there are 2.5 persons who are detected as infected, and that's worrying. And then on the 15th or 16th of August, we're still seeing confirmed cases for those tested at the general outpatient clinic. That means there is still a transmission chain in the community. But then what is assuring is that it's about the residential care homes for the elderly. You know, there have been some cases in these homes, and I'm worried. I'm sure you're worried because we're talking about the elderly who are infirm, and it's a challenge to move them to isolation facilities too. Now we have completed the first round of testing for staff of residential care homes, and that covers 1,048 public sector and private sector homes. And we've tested 2,600 workers, and we've only identified one case. And you could rest assured for these groups, sample collection is done by professionally trained healthcare staff. And we've only managed to identify one case so far, and that's reassuring. A few days ago, we have started a second round of testing. That is for residential care homes, for the elderly. We're doing we've started the second round of testing for the staff because this is a high-risk area. So the point is there are still infected persons in the community, so we must not let down our guard. Secondly, I'd like to talk about the economic prospects of Hong Kong. A few days ago, the government economist briefed you on the latest situation about the GDP in the second quarter. In this year, well, Hong Kong has been hit on three fronts. First, there is the U.S. Sino-U.S. Trade disputes, and then we had social incidents, and then we have the epidemic, and now we are back to the Sino-U.S. Conflicts. So, and the government's also put in place, of course, a series of social distancing measures and so on, and that's affected many different trades. For example, tourism, catering, retail business, or sectors providing personal service, they are all hard hit because many have to stay closed. They cannot operate. And of course, we know for these businesses, they are really suffering. Last week, the GDP for the second quarter was announced. It's a drop of 9% year-on-year. That's why the SAR government has to revise downward the economic forecast for the whole year to -6% to -8%. But I must say here, such an economic contraction on this scale is not unique to Hong Kong. Singapore, Malaysia, Thailand have also seen double-digit contraction in the GDP in the second quarter. And then for our employment rate in April to June, that's an increase of 62%, which is 15-year high. Tomorrow, the government will be announcing the latest unemployment figures, and there's probably no room for optimism. Anyway, on the financial market, it's been rather stable, and everything is in order. The Hong Kong dollar remains strong, and we do not see any capital flight. As for the stock market, there's also been strong momentum. For this year, stock transaction volume has exceeded $120 billion. I asked the Commissioner of Inland Revenue yesterday, and I was told that tax revenue this year would exceed our forecast. because transaction volume has gone up by 40%. As for IPOs, the situation has been rather good. As at the end of last month, Hong Kong's ranked third in terms of IPO volume, and that exceeds $132 billion. Now, in the past few months, the government has launched various measures to support employment and the economy. We have spent $280 billion, which is 10% of our GDP, and that would give us a 5.1% buffer. That includes the budget measures as well as the anti-epidemic fund 1.0 and 2.0. Today, I announced that the government is going to launch anti-epidemic fund 3.0. Earlier on, I asked the Chief Secretary for Administration and Financial Secretary to work out the various measures together. Hopefully, they are able to finalize the details for AF 3.0, and they will try to listen to the views of the various industries, especially those particularly hard hit by our social distancing measures. Now, in the anti-epidemic fund, you might recall, the biggest item that uses the most funds is the Employment Support Scheme, ESS. Today, I'm going to tell you that we have more or less completed the processing all the applications for the first phase of the ESS. Now, this ESS was launched under Anti-Epidemic Fund 2.0 in May, and it amounted to $81 billion. The purpose is to provide time-limited wage subsidy to employers so they do not have to lay off their staff. So the purpose is to keep the jobs for the staff. Now, for the first round of applications already processed, I would like to give you some information. Now, 148,500 employers have received subsidy, and 1.9 million employees benefited from the scheme, and that's for the period June to August this year. For this 1.9 million employees given protection under the ESS, that's higher than the number we previously predicted. Originally, we had in mind 1.77 million people, and it's also a figure higher than what's in the Finance Committee paper. The reason why the figures become higher is because for many we thought they would apply under the trade subsidy scheme. Instead, they've moved to the ESS. And the sum involved is $43.9 billion in giving this wage subsidy. Now, on a 3-month period, we're talking about $23,000 of subsidy for each employee. Now, the cap is $27,000 because we say we will give half of the monthly wage capped at $9,000. So, in theory, an employee could get at most $27,000. But over a 3-year period, each employee is getting on average $23,000. 97% of the employers under the ESS are SMEs hiring less than 50 employees, and about 380 employers hired 500 employees or more. For the self-employed, 116,000 persons received subsidy, amounting to $870 million. And that's included in the total figure that I mentioned. But I'd just like to give you some breakdowns. Now, what I said are just the main points, but later on today, the Secretary for Labour Welfare will be hosting a briefing to give you more details. I think you just need to do some calculation yourself. $81 billion covers 2 rounds, For the first round, we have spent $43.9 billion, so that's higher than expected. And that's because, as I said, for many employers in the catering industry, that because their employees have an MPF account, so at the end they chose instead to apply for wage subsidy under the ESS instead of going to the Food and Environmental Hygiene Department to apply for subsidy under the scheme in relation to the social distancing measures. So that's why we've made some savings in the other scheme. We have set aside $9.5 billion, but we're not able to use all that up. And instead, there's more wage subsidy given to keep the jobs of employees in the catering industry. Now, many have asked whether there's any abuse of the scheme or whether there are complaints. As at the 16th of August, now this is a huge scheme. So far, we've received 387 complaints, which is about 0.3% of all applications. So it's a relatively small figure. And then in our analysis, we see that many of the complaints actually have to do with the fact that people didn't fully grasp the design of the ESS. And in any case, the government and the agents will follow up on these complaints. About 35% of the complaints have been dealt with, and so we're still following up on the other complaints. And over 50 cases have been referred to the Labour Department for follow-up. So on the whole, therefore, the ESS is on the whole in line with the purpose of the scheme. That is, we want to prevent unemployment from getting worse, and we want to avoid more employ people from losing their jobs. Now, for April to June, the unemployment rate was 6.2%. Tomorrow there'll be an announcement of the unemployment figure for May to July. Now, in July we have another wave of the epidemic. Without the ESS, you could imagine the 6.2% would deteriorate substantially. But perhaps please be patient, wait for the announcement tomorrow of the latest unemployment figure. But perhaps I could offer a figure for reference. People receiving comprehensive CSSA because of unemployment, because with people unemployed, they could always apply for assistance under our social security net. In April and May, we have seen a substantial surge in the number of people receiving CSSA. In April, there's over 3,915 new applications, and May over 2,100 new applications. But then now we see that the number of applications is dropping. Last month there were less than 1,000 applications because of unemployment. As I said, the Secretary for the Labor for Labor and Welfare, as well as the head of PICO, will be hosting a press briefing to give you more information about the figures of the first round. As for the second phase of the ESS, it will start receiving applications from the 31st of August. The application period will also be 2 weeks as for the last round, so it will go until the 13th of September. And this round of the ESS covers September to November, so 3 months again. And then we will follow the same principles of the first round of the ESS in launching the second round. First, it has to be easy to understand and follow. Secondly, it has to be easy to apply for. And thirdly, the disbursement must be quick, because we are talking about immediate relief or urgent relief. Now, but then we've heard of various views expressed on during the first round of application. So for the second round, we're going to introduce some new measures. Firstly, for elderly employees. Now, for employees over the age of 65, they do not have to, or their employers rather, do not have to contribute to the MPF fund for those employees aged 65 years old or above. So we're not able to identify employees above this age. But then in the first round, actually, we've already made some improvement for employees at 65 or above. If the employers continue to contribute to the MPF on a voluntary basis, that is, if they have an active MPF account, then we will give them the wage subsidy. With the relaxation, we received 22,000 applications. Of course, the applications have to be submitted by the employers, but some 22,000 employees benefited as a result, but have been covered by these applications. But then at the end, only 16,000 employees were given the subsidy. Why is it that for the other 6,000 employees we couldn't give them subsidy? Because they are, even though they have an MPF account, they're not making any contribution. So there's nothing in those accounts. And then so we don't know, therefore, what wages these people are receiving from the employers. So we do not know what sort of subsidy to give them. For the second round, therefore, we are now adopting a very relaxed approach. As long as the employers provide information of employees aged 65 or above with an MPF account. Now, even if that account doesn't contain any information, we will give a monthly subsidy of $5,000 to these employees. But the full amount of the subsidy must be given to the employees. So that's an improvement over the existing measures. The second improvement, now I and my colleagues have studied very carefully the industries covered by the ESS, that is, which industries are benefiting. And we believe there are two trades which are not severely hit by the epidemic, so they may not be laying off staff. For example, the large property management companies. Now they hire security guards and property management staff for residential developments and so on. And then the second sector is the supermarkets. Well, probably their business has not dropped in the past 6 months or so. Business has remained steady. So that's why in the second round of the ESAs, we will have certain requirements for these trades. Property management services companies, I'm talking about large companies. I'm not talking about the property management for, say, a single block. For property management, so large property management companies, they must return not less than 80% of the wage subsidy to the owners' corporations and other organizations managing these buildings, because it's the owners' corporations that hires a company to be the company property management. So it's actually not the property management company that's paying the wages, but rather it's the owners who pay the management fees, and that in turn, that's how employees are paid. Now we know there are a few large management companies are already doing that. For the wage subsidy they receive from the government, they give the whole amount or a large portion of the subsidy to the accounts of owners corporations, because owners corporations would have a bank account to collect management fees, and if there's a surplus of the fees, it will be saved in account for minor repairs or for procurement of supplies and so on. So we're going to impose a condition that not less than 80% of wage subsidy must be given to owners corporations. It's up to them to decide how to do it. And then the second group are the two main supermarket chains. We don't want to target small or corner stores or so on. We just want to target two large supermarket chains, Parking Shop and Welcome. As they collect wage subsidies for the employees from September to November, they must offer discount to their customers, or if there are disadvantaged groups, these supermarkets must help them out and others with needs. You could, get the details later this afternoon from the other briefing. Now, of course, apart from wage, many businesses face major challenge in terms of the rental expenses. I've said this many times that we must all fight the virus together. We want to keep jobs, so as we come off the epidemic, the economy will rebound better. Now we talk about again major developers who own large shopping malls. Here, we would like to appeal to them again strongly that they offer a rental discount to their tenants, especially those who've been hard hit by the pandemic, including those in the catering, retail, and personal services industries, including, say, travel agents. We want them to give rental relief. It could be either reduction in rent or waiver of management fees, or if tenants are unable to pay the rent on time, they would delay their certain actions, such as terminating the tenancy or taking legal action, or asking the tenants to quit. So I'm making a strong appeal here again. I will be meeting personally with these owners, because some of them are actually collecting wage subsidy from the ESS. Maybe they have reason, of course they have reason to collect the wage subsidy, but this is a time for us to stand together in fighting the virus.
And for the 2020 policy address consultation, after the NPC Standing Committee decision that the current term of LegCo will continue discharge of duties for not less than 1 year. In other words, we're still conducting the regular business at LegCo as usual. So for the fourth policy address, that will be unveiled on table to LegCo on 14th of October, and I will attend the LegCo question and answer session on the 15th of October. And since the epidemic is at a peak, although with the social distancing measures in force, and all the policy secretaries will need to concentrate on the anti-epidemic work. So the consultation for policy address will take the form of teleconferences. From next week, there will be 12 sessions, 12 thematic sessions for consultation. The invitation will be issued to the stakeholders. The general public are welcome to express their views on policy address to the Chief Executive Office by various ways. We shall issue a press release later, inform the public of the ways that they can express their views on the upcoming policy address. Sorry we had a long statement today. We're taking questions. We're now open for the questions. And please put up your hand and state your media